Hello and welcome to the PCM Tech Help Show. I'm your host, Craig Chamberlain. In this video, I'm going to answer a question that somebody asked me. Remember, this is the iCast series, so don't hesitate to ask a question in the comments below so I can get to it. And I have a running list of questions, so if I don't get to it immediately, I apologize, but I am going through the list. Now, in this video, let's talk about whether or not Apple is overcharging for their hardware. As you know, the iPhone 5 just came out, and of course, it's the same price that the iPhone 4 was before. Now, this particular question addressed the fact that Apple's hardware isn't exactly the only one in the market now. So is it at the point where that hardware isn't exactly superior, and can they still justify charging more for it than they have before? Well, there's a couple reasons why it's not overpriced. But it's always been the same idea as the Mac versus PC mindset. Now, the consumer base for Apple will always be willing to pay more money for what you get for Apple products. Now, that doesn't mean Apple's superior in all ways. It just means that those people in particular are more interested in stability and app stability, first of all, and security over the alternatives. Now, that does cost extra money, and it's a result of a closed platform model. I've talked about this a number of times before for Apple, and you've got to understand that the amount of time and money that goes in for them to develop all of that work on their own. When you're talking about like the Androids and Motorola's and LTCs and LTGs and HTCs and Samsungs, you got to understand that the phones themselves are engineered by different companies, and the operating system itself is only engineered by Google. We're talking about Apple, they do everything themselves. Now, we can get into a huge debate as to whether that's the best choice, but obviously that decision has historically always worked out for them because it's yielded extremely positive results in their platform. But you can imagine that results in a much higher cost for them as far as development's concerned, because they're in the process of developing the hardware, the software, and everything else that goes along with it. Now, don't get me wrong, they don't develop the apps themselves, but they do develop the actual app store and all the software that's associated with basically anything that runs on their operating system. So it's good to keep that in mind when you're talking about buying it. It's not strictly about hardware when you're talking about the cost of an iPhone or things like that. But I don't want to say, go out and buy an iPhone. It's superior in all ways because, as you know, if you've watched my videos before, it's not. But hardware isn't everything. Again, if you're for stability and battery life, typically falling on Apple is a better choice because there's less apps there's less phones that developers need to design apps for. Wow, I can't talk this morning. And as a result, you end up with a situation where stability does become a concern on Android phones. And if you've owned both like I have, you know that's true. That is true. And it's the same thing with PC and PC versus Mac. It just tends to be a lot easier for software designers to write software when there's limited products out there for them to write it for. They can test it easier. So that's part of the reason the price is so high on Apple. They kind of want to restrain and restrict so many things that their cost and overhead is a lot higher, and as a result, the product usually costs a lot more. Now, whether that product's going to stay feasible in the current market because the phones from alternative vendors have become more costly is a completely different debate. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen over the next year or two because historically the Samsungs and things like that weren't an option. So I'll be curious to see what Apple does in response to this because their hardware prices are dropping significantly, are rising heavily, significantly. I really can't talk this morning. I apologize. Their hardware prices are rising in comparison to the competitors. And it's quite significant now. You can get a very powerful Android phone where the hardware is the same as the hardware on an Apple phone. But like I said, hardware isn't everything. So no, I would say they're not overcharging because a lot of costs are built into that and it's been a successful model for them. They're not having any trouble selling them. But I am curious to see what's going to happen over the next couple of years. Pay close attention to it because Apple's going to have to do something in response to the high competition market we're in now, and they're not used to that. So either they're going to have to release a whole new wow, they're going to have to wow people to the point of saying, no, I got to have Apple, I got to stay with Apple, or they're going to be able to release a competitive market available phone, which the 4S and 4 you'll probably see drop to a reasonable price so that people who want an iPhone can still get one at a reasonable price, and the iPhone 5 will still be available at a higher price. So that's all there is to this video. As always, thanks for stopping by. Pay special attention to the iPhone one, and thanks for all your questions. I've been really enjoying this iCast series. From the sound of it, you guys have too. And don't hesitate to post any additional questions. Like I said, I'm getting to them as fast as I can, and I can't post a video every 2 hours because I'll drive people in their timeline crazy. So I usually stagger them out. So take it easy, and I'll see you guys in the next video.